Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, look what I got in front of me. Courtesy of BMW Motorcycles of San Diego, I have a 2019 BMW R NineT Scrambler in front of me. And what a gorgeous color combination we have here, and what a gorgeous bike we have here. You are constantly seeing motorcycles on my channel that are sport bikes. You see a lot of Ducatis. I've done the V2, I've done the 959, I've done the V4R. What the heck am I doing with a Scrambler, you might ask me, or a BMW? Well, I decided to venture out a little bit outside of the norm, the typical norm. Most of the time you would see me on a sport bike and I would be hunched over like this, but I think it's time to ride something upright, such as this bike. And look how upright this bike is, and look how comfortable this thing looks. In today's episode, we're going to be taking this for a road test. I'll demonstrate everything for you. I'll tell you a little bit about the power handling and give you my personal perspective on it. We are in beautiful sunny San Diego. Check this place out. And I'm pretty close to home, so now I get to take you on a ride in my neighborhood and show you around, or I should say neighborhoods, because we're going to be going to a couple of different places. So unlike my traditional reviews where I take the bike on a straight road and come back on a straight road, I've been given complete freedom to take this bike for a couple of hours and show you guys what it can do and how I feel about it. So I'm going to be demonstrating for you what I think of this bike, because honestly I haven't ridden too many bikes that have been upright. What makes this Boxer Twin really special, and for me it makes it really special, is because look at this thing. It's protruding out of this side and it's also protruding out of that side. While you're riding the bike, as you look down, you can take a look at the engine. And the engine capacity on this is 1170 cc. It has 110 horsepower, but it's quite beastly because it has 86 foot-pounds of torque, and that kicks in at 6,000 RPM. So it's got quite a lot of grunt. I rode it from the dealership to here, and I pretty much gave it some wide open throttle in 4th and 5th gear, and it had a lot of go. Considering that I'm someone who's used to riding sport bikes, really fast sport bikes. I've ridden the V4R variant, the V4S variant, the V2s, and of course I have the 959. For me to say that this bike, which is 110 horsepower and weighs 485 pounds, fully loaded with fuel and everything, it's got a lot of power. And I think most of that comes from the 86 foot-pounds of torque. What we're looking at here is an acropovic exhaust, and I love the dual design that comes out towards the left side of the motorcycle. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I love the finish on it. I love the fact that it's nice and chrome colored. It's a beautiful art piece, if you want to call it that, and it already has the acropovic, so it's not like you have to go out there and spend a lot of money. And on the way here I rode it, and I think it sounds pretty good, but of course you be the judge, because after this we're going to take it for a ride and then you can tell for yourself what you think of it. Aside from that, I love the vintage classic looking spoke rims that are here. It looks pretty bespoke to me. It looks like somebody customized it to their own taste and to their style. But being that this is a Scrambler, the design of this, whatever that you're looking at, it can probably customize to whatever design that you want. I know for a fact that this particular model comes in 3 different colors. And you can check that out on the link description below. I'll put a link to the BMW's website where you can see all the 3 different colors. But this design that you're looking at is a gold metallic color, and it absolutely looks gorgeous. These lines, they're pretty well done. They're pretty crisp looking, absolutely beautiful. The tank is black, and it has little sparkles of metallic on it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And of course the seat is leather, and when I was sitting on it and I rode here from the BMW dealership to here, it felt like a gel seat. Now I gotta be honest with you, anything outside of a Ducati Panigale is gonna be super comfortable. So for me to ride this bike over here was a joy, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I was thinking to myself, my God, I can have one of these kind of bikes, because I honestly, for 1 hour of riding the Panigale bikes, the sport bikes, and I'm hunched over like this, my back is totally knackered. All right, so as you get into the seating position, there's really nothing much complicated. The only thing that you need to do in your job is to ride the bike. When you ride this bike, you get the feeling of riding a Scrambler. And a Scrambler, the reason why they made the Scrambler, the reason why the name Scrambler exists, is because it's a dual sport type of bike. You get the knobby tires, which I'll show you in a little bit, but these knobby tires allow you to go off-road, and then they allow you to go back on the road. So your job is to just ride the bike. It's nothing fancy. There's no electronic gadgets on this bike. The only electronic gadget that you might find on this bike is an ABS. And of course, there's a stability control that comes as an option. Besides the stability control that this bike has and the ABS, there's really nothing fancy. You're not gonna find a fancy gauge on this bike. The gauge has only one option, and that's to tell you how fast you're going, and it doesn't even have a gear indicator, which I think it should on a bike like this, which costs about $13,000–$14,000. It should definitely have a gear indicator, but it doesn't. It tells you if you're neutral, which is pretty helpful, and it did help me out, but otherwise it doesn't have a gear indicator, and I wish it had that. You get the standard clutch, you get the standard brakes. On this bike, it's equipped with heated grips. Now, aside from that, this is not a sport bike, it's a Scrambler, so it's not meant for performance, or as much, I should say. So it does have a preload on the spring, and it also has adjustable forks. Aside from that, the bike weighs 485 pounds, fully loaded with fuel, and you have 4 piston calipers in the front, and you have 2 piston calipers in the rear. Now, like I mentioned, I rode it from the dealership to here. It had plenty of stopping power. I didn't feel like for a second that this bike didn't have enough stopping power. It pretty much handled pretty well, and it pretty much braked pretty well. Of course, just like any new bike, you got to get used to it, and by now I did get used to it. But aside from that, the last thing I want to touch on is that the clutch lever as well as the brake lever, those are fully adjustable, and you can change all that very easily by turning the knob. All right, guys, I think that we're pretty much ready. I think it's time for us to take it on the road and have some fun with it, and I can describe to you how I feel about it, how it makes me feel, and if I would get one of these myself. All right, let's go. I'm excited. So, I'm not really used to riding motorcycles like this. As you may know, I'm used to riding the Panigale series motorcycles. And this is a treat for me because it's my first time riding a bike like this. I don't really have that much experience riding the BMW line of motorcycles. The only BMW motorcycle that I've ever ridden was the S1000R bike, and that bike is more, it's definitely upright, but it's more sporty than this. This is more of a heritage style bike. It's a Scrambler. It's a dual purpose bike meant for off-roading and for on-roading, and we're going to get more into it. In case you're wondering where we are, we're at Coronado Island right now. I thought I'd ride out here and do a video from here. I think it's a really cool looking place, so why not? We're going to be talking about a couple things on this review. One thing that we're going to be talking extensively about is comfort, rider comfort, and you riding this bike. Number 2 talking point is going to be the performance of this bike. Those are the 2 highlights that we're going to be discussing on this review. But overall, the bike has 110 horsepower and 86 foot-pounds of torque at 6,000 RPM. This bike is quite beastly. So talking point number 1 is going to be the performance of this bike. And at 86 foot-pounds of torque, it's got more torque than my Panigale series. And let me tell you something, the giggle factor is definitely there. With 86 foot-pounds of torque and no windscreen, this baby pushes you back, way back. Right now I'm giving the bike wide open throttle, and we're definitely north in the triple-digit numbers. And this thing can go up in the triple-digit numbers without a blink of an eye. Top speed on this bike is about 120 miles an hour, but it'll do more than 120. The bike weighs about 485 pounds with fuel and everything all together. So it's quite a heavy bike. It's not necessarily, you know, it's definitely not one of those lean and fit motorcycles like the Panigale series motorcycles. But let me tell you something, don't let that put you off, because this thing is very agile, which I'll demonstrate for you in a little bit. Acceleration on this bike is phenomenal as well. We just hit 60 miles an hour really quickly. Now, before we get into trouble here, I just want to point out that it is definitely not lacking in performance. It is definitely not lacking in speed. In situations where you need to speed up a little bit, in situations where you're taking it to the canyons, and who knows, quite possibly, you could even take this bike to the track if you wanted to. You're definitely going to be able to keep up with the 600 class bikes, that's for sure. Now, as far as the CCs, as far as the engine capacity of this bike, we're talking about a Boxer Twin. Plenty of grunt, plenty of horsepower. It's got an 1170cc engine, and it is way bigger than my Panigale. With these, check these out. Look, when you look down, you can see that the engine is sticking out from the left and right sides. The engine is air cooled, and it's a brilliant, brilliant masterpiece. As far as ride quality is concerned, it's very, very smooth, but it has sort of like a vibration whenever you turn on the bike because of this Boxer Twin. As you, when we pull over, I'm going to rev the engine for you, and you're going to notice that the Boxer Twin has kind of like a gyroscopic effect where it pulls the bike a little bit towards the right. Now, I spoke to Gary about that, and that seems to be some kind of like a personality about the Boxer engines, and that's something that they used to have. They used to be more pronounced in the older BMW motorcycles, but they've improved it significantly by a whole lot with the new motorcycles BMW's been coming out with. So right now we're idle. Check this out. You see? The Boxer Twin, it's got a gyroscopic effect, and it's making the bike lean a little bit towards the right, which I think is pretty cool. This bike is definitely not a bike for the inexperienced. It's definitely not a bike for someone who's new. It's a heavy bike, and if you're a brand new rider, I would not suggest this bike as your first bike. It might seem like it's not intimidating because it's only 110 horsepower and it's an upright bike, but it's pretty heavy. At 485 pounds, it's pretty heavy, and it's got a lot of low-end torque, which is about 86 foot-pounds of torque. So it's definitely a torque monster, and it has good power. But for someone who's a brand new rider, this is not a good bike for that. As mentioned, it's got that torque that kind of leans the bike a little bit towards the right, so I wouldn't suggest it as a bike for the first timer. The mirrors, they don't vibrate at all, and they're pretty easy to see out of. The handlebars are pretty upright. I can ride this bike for hours, and one thing that I seriously appreciate about this bike is the fact that the bike is upright, and it's got this really, really comfortable seat. You can fit two people on this bike very comfortably, and you can go for very long rides. I've been riding this bike for about 2 hours. I took it out the other day as well, and so it's my second time riding this bike. Now, under normal circumstances, if I'm riding the bike for about an hour, if I'm riding a Panigale bike or a sport bike for about an hour, my shoulders are killing me, my back is killing me, and the steep position that I'm usually in when I'm riding a sport bike is just not comfortable or conducive enough for long rides. It's good for the track because you're constantly leaning back and forth, you're moving left and right, and your body's constantly shifting. But in that situation, it's really not that tiring as much as it is when you're going on straights, as I am on the road. You're typically not moving your body as much, so you're in one position for long extended periods of time, and that makes you seriously tired. But on a bike like this, it seems to be super comfortable. The gel seat makes it super comfortable as well, and the bumps are easily absorbed. When I'm going through bumps, I don't feel anything at all. Overall, a pretty comfortable bike. So as far as comfort is concerned, I would say that this bike is definitely comfortable. I'm about 140 pounds and hovering around the 5'7" range. But this bike is meant for like a much taller person, I believe, because it's got a pretty tall seat. The seat is about 33.5 inches, and I think the springs on this bike are weighted for someone, I don't know, anywhere between 180 to 200 pounds. So it's definitely a bike for like a bigger person. So if you're a bigger person, you'll definitely feel comfortable in this bike. That being said, shorter stature people such as myself would also be very comfortable in this bike, because it took me a little while to get used to, but once I got used to it, I was feeling at home with this bike, and I'm still feeling at home, and I feel comfortable with this bike. I don't feel like it's too big. I don't feel like it's too intimidating, but it's a learning curve. It's something that you're gonna have to get used to. Knobby tires are something that I'm just not used to riding, and it's different. It's a different feeling than you would get from a regular bike. Like I'm used to bikes like this guy right here. You know, he's riding an R3 right here. I'm used to bikes like this. So it feels a little bit heavy whenever I'm turning, but I feel that this bike could also be a little bit flickable when you take it to the curves. If you take it to the canyons and you take it to the track, I feel like the bike can be I think the bike can be thrown into the corners, but don't think it's like a Panigale type of bike where it's easily flickable. It's not like that exactly. It does feel a little bit heavy because of the knobby tires, but I'm sure if you change out the tires, you can definitely make the bike turn in a little bit more easily. But once again, I'd have to test that out, which I'm not sure if I can. Now, one thing is obvious, and I'm glad I'm talking about it when I'm doing 80 miles an hour, is that this bike does not have a windscreen. So you feel everything. I read a quote online, and they said that, I think the quote went something like this: driving a car fast is like watching an action movie. Riding a bike fast is like being in the action movie. And that's the best description I can give you when you ride this bike very quick, because the bike doesn't have a windscreen, so it's very visceral. It's a very visceral feeling. You feel everything, every single sensation. The vibration I'm getting from the handlebars, the wind blast that's hitting my chest and my helmet. It's a feeling that I've never gotten before, and I kind of like it, to be honest with you. I like the fact that it doesn't have a windscreen, and on hot summer days, if you live in hot summer climates, you might enjoy that because the wind hits you directly in the chest, and it gives you a cooling effect, where if you're wearing a perforated jacket, it'll definitely cool you down. So that's definitely appreciated. Right now it's not really that hot because I'm in San Diego. San Diego doesn't really get that hot, but I imagine in the summertime, whenever we do hit like 80 miles an hour, yeah, if you want to call that hot, when it gets to like 80 miles an hour, I'm sure it'll definitely be appreciated. And one thing I just noticed about this bike is that it has self-canceling signals. So whenever you're signaling to the left or to the right, and you actually get there, it cancels it out for you. I have no idea how it finds that out. How does it know what lane you're in? How does it know you're making a right? That's pretty cool. Overall, it's a fun bike to ride. It's very enjoyable. It definitely gives me a lot of pleasure riding this bike. It's a lot of fun. I could definitely see myself going on long road trips with this bike, because honestly, that's what it's meant for. Take it on the back roads, take it on smooth surfaces. It's a dual sport bike. No problems at all. And not to mention, it's gorgeous looking. It's getting a lot of attention when I'm riding this bike. People look at it, people give you the thumbs up, people stop by and ask you questions. Some people even know what kind of bike it is. And overall, it's a pretty fantastic bike. At 70 miles an hour, I'm cruising with this bike. The wind is not that overwhelming, actually. So if you were curious to know if this is something that you could ride for long extended periods of time because it doesn't have any windscreen, I think you can, because you're not going to be going that fast anyways. On cruising speeds in the highway, you're going to be doing 80 miles an hour tops maybe, but I think the wind gets pretty excessive once you're doing past 80-90 miles an hour. You're not going to be going that fast on this bike for extended periods of time anyways. Unfortunately, the clouds came back out. Oh no, come back, where's the sun? One negative thing that I don't like about the bike is that it doesn't have a second cluster where it tells you what RPM range you're in. It also doesn't tell you what gear you're in, but it will tell you that if you're in neutral or not. So if they put a tachometer on this bike where I can tell what RPM range I'm in and I know what gear I'm in, I think that would definitely be appreciated. Definitely has passing power, I'll tell you that. Alright, looks like we are towards the end of this review. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this bike, and if you would consider getting one of these for yourself. Once again, a huge shout out and a thank you to BMW Motorcycles of San Diego. We're almost there. Here we are. Thank you so much to BMW Motorcycles for loaning me this bike for a test review for you guys. I really appreciate it. Check these guys out. They're awesome. As a matter of fact, today's Monday and they are closed. But Gary, the owner, was nice enough to allow me to take this bike out for you guys and review it for you guys. So I appreciate you coming along for the ride. I appreciate you giving this video a thumbs up, and I appreciate you subscribing to the channel. If you like videos like this and you want to see more BMW motorcycles and reviews and vlogs, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. And thank you guys so much for joining me once again, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.